Hey guys, it's Dennis Farrell here with the Wrestling Perspective podcast. We have two big announcements, and I thought I'd just kind of put it in its own little podcast so everybody can hear. So it's going to be a short little couple minute podcast here where I'm talking about what's going on, the two big things that's going on in the world of wrestling perspective. I am going to break the news as if you guys are like on bated breath waiting for it. Before we do that, I gotta tell you, both these announcements could not happen without Blue Chew. Blue Chew has been a sponsor of ours now for about 4-5 months, and I really hope you guys will take the opportunity to help go support them. If you go to bluechew.com, you go through, you get your free meal enhancement pills. They're giving you a free packet free. You hear them on all the wrestling podcasts now, so I don't have to go through the spiel right here. Whether you're male or female, this will help your love life. But I'm asking you to go use the promo code WPP and just pay $5 shipping and handling. Your $5, believe it or not, will help this podcast beyond belief. I know it's the holiday season, and it's either support the podcast with Blue Chew or buy a Young Buck shirt or a ticket to a wrestling program. And I get it and I understand it. And hopefully if you can't support us now, you'll support us down the line. But with the Blue Chew money that they've been paying us, we've been trying to invest it back into ourselves. We joke about sending our kids to college, but truthfully, between you, me, no one else is listening. It's just you and me. Well, yeah, I know you're on your way to work or on your way home, depending on when you're listening, but we take the Blue Chew money and invest it back into the podcast to make it better. One, for instance, and I guess our first big breaking news is we are creating a podcast network. It's nothing huge. I don't want it to make it sound like we're reinventing the podcast game or reinventing the podcast network game, because you can throw a rock and hit somebody with their own podcast network. What this is just a fun place where we can help support some great wrestling podcasters who probably deserve to have a break. There are a million great podcasters out there that I didn't approach because they're doing such great things on their own. They don't need our help. And not all the podcasts that I've invited need our help. But it's a nice little bump. PD and I will occasionally throw a podcast up there, but we're trying to assemble a group of probably 5 or 6 shows that have a ton of potential. We feel like people should listen to, and we're going to pull them together and help them grow. And as they grow, they will share their fans with the other shows and hopefully create an amazing wrestling community over there. And we're really excited about this. So for now, you can go to blogtalkradio.com/Wrestling Perspective Network. You can subscribe there. I know we're on Stitcher right now. We'll be on iTunes soon. As that stuff pops up, we'll start getting the links out for everybody to see. It's hopefully it will be what I want it to be. It's going to be a fun, safe community where people can talk wrestling, share their ideas, and have a little talent. And then they grow on and move on. Then they may realize that they want to run their own feed, and they move on, and then we'll fill their spot with someone else that just needs a break. Not that I feel like we're making breaks here, but we want to create a community where shows can grow up and move on, either to something big or something different. But we're hoping that this podcast network will give you an alternative. There are some great shows out there, and there are some not so great wrestling shows out there. But I'm trying to assemble my 5 to 7 favorite podcasts that I feel like should be the biggest podcasts out there. So hopefully, if you support our podcast, you'll go over to blogtalkradio.com/Wrestling Perspective Network and go support some of the great podcasts out there. Revisionist Booking has come over. Thank God. I love Michael Berry. He's one of my favorite people. Eric Cordova, Mouth of the South Shore. He's going to start doing a show over here. One of my original favorite people in the podcast game. I've always stayed in touch no matter where our paths takes us. You may have heard for a short time on this feed. I think it only made one podcast, but our good friend Russ and Steve, they will be reuniting and doing a show on this feed. So it's a lot of good stuff here. blogtalkradio.com/Wrestling Perspective Network. Hopefully you will support them as you support us. Good group of guys. I'm really excited to try and grow a culture under a Wrestling Perspective umbrella where we can help other people like P and I have been helped in this podcast game. So, and as I said, as the links start coming along, we've actually just kind of put this together in like less than a week. So we're really putting it together as we launch and roll out, and it could be something special, and I hope it will be. The second announcement I'm super excited to talk about with you guys. I talk on here about how I used to be a ESPN radio guy, and it was some of the most amazing times. Never in my life would I ever thought I would be on ESPN radio. In a little background, I started podcasting in 2009 with my buddy Nate Tucker. We started doing fantasy football, and from there, ESPN 1090, it's a small little rinky-dink AM station here in Detroit, hired us. We thought it was the most amazing thing. Never in my life. I never went to school for this. Never in my life did I ever think I would be on the radio. And I found myself on the radio. The station, unfortunately, went under. Another 2 years went by. I believe, I was with Fox Sports Detroit within that period too, doing some website stuff. So I still kind of felt like I was cool there. Then that went away. They switched their formats and how they wanted to do things, and I was let go. Then 105.1, Detroit Sports 105.1, which was an affiliate of ESPN, opened up in Detroit. They were around probably about 2 years before they brought me on board to do fantasy football, and I will always be thankful for like Tom Mazaway and Dave Shore for bringing me on. Those were two of the big reasons why I got lucky for a second chance in radio, and I took advantage of it, and it was great. And I was doing a Thursday night show. I was doing a Sunday night show. I was doing the Detroit Lions pregame show with Herman Moore. If you're a Lions fan or an older guy, you'll know who he is. Most amazing time of my life. Then that station goes under. They actually flipped in the middle of the afternoon to, I believe it was like 80s classic rap music, and nothing against it, but it's tough to see that station still around. I kind of thought my time in the radio industry was done. At that point, two failed stations. I was becoming a retread talent. No one really was interested in the kind of show I was doing. It was fantasy football back then. A couple years ago, as we've noted a million times, Petey and I got together and decided to do a wrestling podcast. It was part of me trying to reinvent myself and make it feel like maybe there's something else I can do and find a niche. And that's what happened when I got into fantasy football radio. There were not a ton of fantasy football radio shows on the air when I debuted back then. There were still some. ESPN had theirs on the national side, and you probably could find one here or there in different markets, but it wasn't like it is today. The industry became way too watered down. It didn't matter how good you were, because you could live in a neighborhood and 20 people are doing a fantasy football podcast. Became too watered down for me, and I just kind of got out of it. I still dabble in the fantasy football world to keep my fan base around. I decided to get into wrestling, and the podcast has been phenomenal. It's had its ups and downs, but it's been and grown bigger than I ever thought. Then I became into talks with SB Nation. Now, some of you guys may remember SB Nation as just a fan blog. They got into the radio game and have been around for a while. I think at one point they were, in bed with Yahoo Sports Radio, NBC Sports Radio, but they still have a ton of nationally syndicated radio stations throughout the United States. They reached out. We sat down. We've been talking. January 5th, I believe, 5th or 6th, maybe even the 8th. I don't even know what day it is. But I am going to launch Wrestling Perspective Radio. It will be me and another guest or a friend throughout the week sitting down, recapping wrestling. It's a once a week. I believe it'll air on Friday or Saturday nights, depending on what time zone and what radio market you're in. It'll be an hour long. It'll be me and somebody else just kind of recapping the top wrestling news of that week. And then the last few minutes, we will take a either previous or a current interview that PD and I do, cut it down, and give you just a little preview for the national audience of what this interview is going to be about. And then we're going to send people to the podcast. Pretty simple as that. And I'm really excited for this opportunity. I just found out today that we'll be in about 80 markets throughout the United States, which means 80 radio stations throughout the United States. A few of the bigger ones is Houston 94.1, Pittsburgh 540, WWCS, the Horn of Austin, Mile High Sports Radio in Denver, the Ticket in Dallas, Detroit WCAR, which was 1090 that I originally came from my first time around, which kind of tickles me pink, honestly. I'm really excited about that opportunity coming back. I couldn't do this without you guys, the fans, downloading, listening, telling your friends, and keep that up. B, the Blue Chew money. As I said, we're taking the Blue Chew money. We invest it back into ourselves to grow the podcast, to hopefully make it better for you guys. And these are two examples of what we're doing. It's not that we're taking the money and we're just hoarding it for PD and myself and, go buy our merch and go buy our stuff so we can get rich. It's go buy our stuff so we can put it back into this passion project of ours to make it better for you, the fans. Every cent we've made off this podcast has gone back into the podcast. Some things have worked, some things haven't, but at the end of the day, we haven't taken 1 cent of this and spent it on ourselves in a frivolous way. And I wanted you guys to know this. Most, if not all, podcasts kind of do that. And we want to support you the way you're supporting us. So, like I said, please, BlueChew.com. It's a free shipment. You don't have to use it. You can put it in a drawer, save it, keep it, throw it out. Heck, I don't care. Use a promo code WPP, and all you pay is $5 shipping. It's that simple. We're thankful if you go do it and tell us, and we'll give you a shout out on the air. But that's what we do with our money. It's a kind of the dirty little secret in the podcast or radio game that, you take the money, you save it, and you keep it for yourselves. Look at us, we're making money. I think we're one of the few shows that really invest it back into ourselves. And the same thing with the shirt money. Whatever percentage of the monies we get for the shirt monies, look at me, the money we get from the shirt, we put it back into the podcast. whatforapparel.com/WPP. You can buy a shirt there. We joke about sending our kids to college, but truthfully, we're just happy when someone gives us a few bucks and we want to put it back into the show. Or you could just go to PayPal and throw me some money at Dennis77FARRELL@gmail.com. That one's just even a shameless plug right there. But like I said, every cent we get, it goes back into the podcast. And going to SB Nation, being on 80 radio stations throughout the United States to entertain people and try to grow the community that we're setting up here for you guys is a prime example. The network that we're trying to give podcasters an opportunity on is a prime example of us trying to give back and do different things. At the end of the day, I had a lot of help getting to the positions I am, whether it was in football and baseball. And I don't want to forget the help that people have given me. Some guys have put their necks on the line. Some guys have, under the table, slipped me an email address. And it's worked, and sometimes it hasn't. But people don't have to do that in this world. And, if we can get people to go to the Wrestling Perspective Network and listen and support the guys that are that are trying really hard, then that's what we want to do. And then hopefully they can grow up to be the next Conrad Thompson or the next Wrestling Perspective. I just want to try to get platforms for people that deserve it. And you, the fans, deserve to listen to good podcasts. So it won't be on this feed. This feed is going to be primarily for PD and myself, if you're listening. We may add another podcast. We've been talking about it. If we do, it'll be a surprise. A pretty big name, believe it or not. But that's way too early for that. But I want to just say thank you guys, because this is what happens when you support us, and then we try to come back and use that money to support you. So essentially, the big news is we're creating a network for young podcasters or old, or podcasters that need a break. And it's original content. You're not going to hear the same podcast on 8 different little podcast networks. It's all original content. I know we're going to have a Total Divas recap podcast on there. I'm really excited, from Pamela and Michelle. So tons of great stuff. And trust me, I'm really excited about that. SB Nation, 80 radio stations throughout the United States. Follow me at Dennis77 Farrell or WP_pod, POD, and we will tweet out links and stuff. But thank you, everybody who has been around and listened and downloaded and reached out and tell me they love the show. I really love it when people tell me that. And then I really want to know what you like and don't like, so we can change or incorporate and move things around. We're trying to make this the most fan-friendly show, wrestling show out there with a current wrestler. And we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much. This is what our hard work, you're being a fan, this is what we can build together. If you're a fan and you've wanted to try to podcast, send me a demo. Maybe we can throw it up on the podcast. This is what we try to do, is give back to people. So thank you. And go to bluechew.com. Use the promo code WPP, and that will help us. Like I said, more than you know. Maybe this is a big 17-minute Blue Chew ad, but we could not be here doing this without Blue Chew. We want to do what it takes to keep them around, and we can't do that without you. So thank you. And by the way, tell your friends to do it. I don't know. So thank you, guys. We'll have a podcast up this week. And PD and I can't wait to entertain you. I hope you guys have a good early Monday, rest of the week, whenever you're listening to this. Thank you from all of us here at Wrestling Perspective. Thank you. And have a good trip home.